Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, I've been very happy recently, which is a big change from earlier in the season because my Boston Celtics have been on a tear, and specifically one Jayson Tatum has been on an absolute tear. He has vaulted his play he's not quite an MVP candidate, but he's right on the periphery. And this is his latest performance was virtuoso performance against the Brooklyn Nets, 54 points in a win, and sending the fans home happy because they beat Kyrie Irving too. So Tatum, I think over the past 2 months, Sap has really, really elevated his game.
He's been playing great, Jet. I mean, this is what we've always wanted to see from Jayson Tatum, and he just recently turned 24. So, he's starting to enter the period of time where now he's in his fifth year, and yet he's at his physical peak, and he'll continue to get a little bit better. And the thing that I'm so impressed with Tatum is that he's going out there and he's making his teammates better. He's passing the basketball. He's rebounding. He's defending. He's doing it all. And then obviously we know on the offensive end how good he is. And you talk about the Celtics in their last 19 games, Jet, they're 16-3. They've been the best team in basketball for a month and a half. And Jayson Tatum, look at his numbers for the year, 26.5 points, 8.2 rebounds, 4.2 assists. He's averaging 34 points per game in the 6 games since the All-Star break. He's playing as well as anyone, and he's been efficient, improving his three-point shot, going to the basket more, which is something we always want to see from him. He was 14 of 17 from the free throw line in Sunday's win, which was huge. So he's doing everything. He's one of those players, and again, Kevin Durant probably isn't fair, but he's similar to Durant in a sense that a guy that size with that handle who can beat you at the rim, from mid-range, from deep. There's just not a lot of those guys in the league, and he happens to be one of them. So the Celtics are playing basketball to the point where 38 Silver's site has them as the most likely NBA champion this year, which seems kind of odd since they're the 5th seed in the East. But I'll tell you, over the last month and a half, I can't think of a team that's played better than the Celtics.
Yeah, both can be true that nobody's played better than them the past month and a half, and that's stupid. That that the Nate Silver prediction is both of those things are true in my mind. I don't think the Celtics are going to win a championship this year. I think anybody who really believes that is out of their mind. But also, the fact is they have played better basketball than pretty much everybody in the NBA for the past, month and a half, 2 months, whatever you want to call it, Sap. And that's in large part, or mostly because Jayson Tatum's completely elevated his game. And I don't know, Sap, I'll throw out a little conspiracy theory out there because this has happened with him before when he's made the All-Star game in the past. So this is his 3rd time. He seems to loosen up and let his game come to him a little bit more and doesn't push as much. It's almost like he has to get that achievement under his belt and then feel like, okay, now I'm, I don't have any more pressure on me. I made the All-Star game. Okay, we're good. I can take a deep breath and just start playing normal now.
I'll buy into that. I mean, this happened 2 years ago after the All-Star break. He had an incredible stretch, and then the league was shut down because of COVID. He did this last year. As I said, he's averaging 34 points per game since the All-Star break. I mean, he's just been unstoppable. I think it's a great point, Jet. Also, I think that once they got past the trade deadline and they kept Tatum and Brown together. And look, if they ever split them up, it's going to have to be done in the offseason. It'd be too big a move to do at the trade deadline, although, Ben Simmons for James Harden was pretty big, but those were malcontents at their particular team at that time. But I think that made them feel much more comfortable. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to your guy, Marcus Smart. Since he came back from, an injury, he's been a different player. He's playing the point guard role the way it's supposed to be played. He's not looking to score as much. He's a distributor, a facilitator. He's the best passer on that team. He's doing the things that Marcus Smart's very good at, which is play defense, hustle points, and also be a distributor, and then make baskets as necessary. The end of the game against Brooklyn, the telling to me is the Celtics are up 3 with 45 seconds left, and Tatum gets double teamed, kicks it out to Marcus Smart. 2 months ago, Marcus Smart would have chucked up a 3. Instead, he waited a split second, kicked it out to Jaylen Brown. Brown faked, hit a 3-pointer. Now that 3-point lead was 6 with 39 left. Not have made 2 months.
Huge difference.
That's winning basketball. And I think a lot of that is Marcus Smart. So now all the pieces are fitting together better. You've got Tatum, you've got Brown, Marcus Smart, Rob Williams, and Al Horford are doing their job. And the key here is Rob Williams has been much more durable this year. That starting five is as good as any in the NBA in terms of both ends of the floor. That's a really good defensive unit, right? I mean, you've got Williams, Horford, and Smart are all plus defenders, and we know Brown and Tatum, when motivated, can be plus defenders as well. That's a really good defensive unit, and now they're being more efficient on offense. I'm optimistic here, but again, as we talked about last week, the Eastern Conference is so loaded and deep with teams that do have flaws but have strengths that how they match up is going to depend on who they play in the very first round. If they can get Cleveland or Chicago in the first round, I'd feel more confident than if they were playing, say, Milwaukee or Philly in the first round. So the next 5 weeks is going to be important to see where they land.
Oh, without a doubt, Sap. I think that, we've talked about this briefly in prior podcasts, and I think seeding for the Celtics is incredibly important. And, there's teams that I think that they fully capable of beating. You just mentioned a couple of them, Chicago and Cleveland. And the teams below them, I think they're capable of beating those teams. But there's teams I outright don't think the Celtics can beat in a series. Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Miami. I think that's a toss up. I think the Celtics would have a really hard time against them. And I would pick Miami in that series, but I think it would be closer than if they were to play Milwaukee or Philadelphia. Or even if the Nets can get fully healthy, I think they're extremely dangerous. You saw what Kyrie Irving did, and I hate the guy. You saw what he did the other day. He put up 50 points on like 16 shots.
Amazing. Talk about efficiency, right? One of the best games you'll ever see, Kyrie Irving the other night against Charlotte. Now, Charlotte doesn't play much defense, but still, you got to make those shots. And as you said with Miami, they're right now looking seed in the East, but I think people would think that Philadelphia is a stronger contender. Milwaukee, since the defending champs, will be looked at as a stronger contender. And also Miami's best player is Jimmy Butler. We're both big fans of Jimmy Butler, but we're in agreement that Joel Embiid, James Harden, both on Philadelphia, Giannis in Milwaukee, and certainly Kevin Durant in Brooklyn are all better than Jimmy Butler. And so is Jayson Tatum. So, Miami may be the one team that they end up with the best record in the regular season, but that every step of the way, they may be facing a team that has a better number one player than they have. Now, they're a really well-constructed team, right? Because you've got a lot of veterans on there like Butler, Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo. Tyler Hero's probably going to be sixth man of the year, well-coached team by Eric Spoelstra. And then you add someone like PJ Tucker. So they're a team that really gets the most out of what they have. But the ceiling for Brooklyn, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee is probably higher than Miami. So you could have a situation, Jeff, where the Celtics, if they finish as, say, the 4 seed, play Chicago in the first round, have home court advantage, beat the Bulls, and advance Miami. We would have home court advantage. The Celtics would have against the Heat. It's that wide open in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, the Celtics want to avoid Philadelphia, Milwaukee, I think, as long as possible. And everybody wants to avoid Brooklyn if they're healthy, because I think, and I think you think so too, Seth, that those three pieces fit really well together.
Healthy, Ben Simmons, if
right,
back healthy and engaged, I think he's a perfect fit for them because he can do a lot of the things that you don't have to ask Durant and Kyrie to do, namely play defense. He's a great facilitator, a good rebounder. I think he'll get some open looks with Durant and Kyrie Irving. And we know Kyrie Irving and Durant, although they haven't played together that much this year, we can see that there's a symphony there between those two. Their games do mesh. It's just that they need some reps heading into the postseason. And again, it could also come down to, can Kyrie Irving play home games? Right now, he can't. And also scenario, Jet, where Toronto's the 7th seed, Brooklyn's the 8th seed, that's a play-in game. It would be in Toronto. Kyrie Irving can't play in Canada. So there's a lot of different variables.
Forgot about that. That's true.
Yeah, another variable, although, Kevin Durant out there, I always give that team a chance. Even with just Kevin Durant, he's that damn good. But yeah, I think the Eastern Conference, which for years was the LeBron James Invitational, is completely wide open because these teams, at their best can be very, very difficult to beat. But they do have flaws. Harden and Embiid, they have a tendency of petering out once you get to the playoffs. We'll see what happens with them. Milwaukee, they've been on somewhat cruise control this year, right? And they've lost some games you expected them to win. And to me, Giannis is the best player in the world. But Middleton and Holiday, are they going to play at the level they did last year in the postseason? That's a big question. So completely wide open.
Yeah, and Sap, sort of with that comes expectations too for certain teams, and if you
Mhm.
don't meet them, there's a lot of times there's a price to pay in terms of the team looks a lot different, and the expectations are certainly rising for the Celtics. But as far as as Philadelphia is concerned, I mean, they went all in on this team, and if
Mhm.
they don't get to at least the finals this year, because Embiid has yet to make the finals, it's going to be a massive disappointment and a sort of where do you go from there? Is it just
Embiid hasn't even made the conference finals. Remember, he lost 2 years ago or 3 years ago against Toronto on Kawhi's triple bounce in Game 7. That was in
right?
the second, and the Celtics eliminated them in the bubble back in 2020, and then last year they lost in the second round to Atlanta. So they haven't even made the conference finals, and we know that Embiid not necessarily has had playoff failures, but is he going to be healthy? And he's had a great year, leading contender for MVP. And Harden, we've seen peter out in the postseason as well. But I still think if they're clicking on all cylinders, they're going to be tough to beat because I really like Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Ty, Marcus Smart type player, great defender. And then you get Tobias Harris, who can slide in as number 4 guy. It's going to be interesting to see with the buyout market if they can add a player or two. DeAndre Jordan is rumored to be going there. I think that'll be a decent backup for Joel Embiid. So,
Yeah, because they're not
yeah,
deep.
the
That's the
Eastern
problem.
deep. That's the problem. Yeah, that is. And look, in the postseason, you want to go 8 deep, maybe 9, because the schedule stretches out a little bit, especially in the first round. But, foul trouble, nagging injuries, guys having off nights. You want to have some other options on the bench besides just a couple of guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So while the Celtics are surging in the Eastern Conference, Sap, and Jayson Tatum is playing the best basketball of his career and continues to ascend, we head over to the Western Conference and your Los Angeles Lakers. And basically, the opposite is true for them in terms of how they're producing as a team, and Russell Westbrook in terms of how he's producing as a player. And not only are things falling apart there in LA, but things are really deteriorating with the relationship between Russell Westbrook and the Lakers fans and the media. And it's gotten exceptionally ugly. And Russell Westbrook's wife is getting involved, and the rest of his family. Russell Westbrook's now very upset about the nickname of Westbrick that Skip Bayless has given to him. Sap, without reading this giant statement that Russell Westbrook made, talking about how it's you're putting a slander on my family name and stuff. How do you view this whole situation between him and Skip Bayless right now?
Well, Skip labeled them this back in 2012, and we know Skip Bayless is a huge Kevin Durant fan. He thinks he's a greater player than LeBron James. Has said that for a decade. And when Oklahoma City would have any issues, whether it was losing the 2012 finals to the LeBron James led Miami Heat, or 4 years later losing to Golden State, and it was always Westbrook's fault, although Durant didn't exactly step up either. So he kind of gave him that nickname. And look, it kind of fits. I mean, we're talking about a guy this year who continually gets worse as a shooter. He's averaging 18 points, 7.6 rebounds, and 7.2 assists per game. Again, he's a volume player because he shows up every night and he busts his ass on offense, not necessarily defense. But I like to look at shooters' splits. He's shooting 43% from the floor, 28% from 3, and
That's
67%
horrible.
free throw line. He's a point guard. Like, your point guard has to shoot 80% from the free throw line because, in theory, at the end of the game, if you're up a bucket or two, they're going to foul the point guard because he has the ball in his hands. Well, he's not going to help you with that. I think he's being a little bit oversensitive about this. And I like Westbrook, the person, more than I do the player. I think he's a good guy. I mean, he's very charitable, interesting, great family man, all that stuff. I do like him. On the court, it's a different thing because he just hasn't evolved as a player. And now as that athleticism wanes a little bit, he's not quite the player he was even last year with Washington. And Skip Bayless is paid handsomely, $6.5 million a year, to needle people. And that's what he's very, very good at. I just have to remind people that, Westbrick, it's not a derogatory name. It's not as if Skip is calling him a racial slander. If fans
Right.
start with racial slanders, that's awful. We can't have that in the sport of basketball or anywhere. I get that. But I'll remember back in 1984 when the Lakers lost to the Celtics and Magic Johnson had a really bad final series. He had a nickname, Tragic Johnson, for the next year. And this is a guy who had won 2 championships already and had been 2 finals MVPs. And because they lost to the Celtics in 7 games, and he had, missed free throws and, ran out the clock at the end of a game when the Lakers didn't even get a shot off to potentially win that game. He was labeled Tragic Johnson. That was the headline. And he fought through it. They won the championship the next year. Then he started winning MVPs and he won 2 more championships. So West, like I said, I like him a lot, but he can't be oversensitive about this. And he was talking about how at a PTA meeting, that his 4-year-old son is very proud of the name, which is awesome. That's an awesome story. But, obviously you don't want to see any of this fall down to the kids or his wife or anything like that. But again, $44 or $47 million a year, you're in the public eye. That's not that bad to be called Westbrick. Shoot better, start winning, and maybe the nickname will subside.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a tricky situation because the fact that his family is now involved in it's not right. And I think the fans have been rightfully frustrated with his play, like you said, because he hasn't evolved and he hasn't been willing to take on any sort of a different role. So from a fan perspective, I get that it's frustrating, and I would be upset with him as a fan of Lakers, but he's also, him and his family have been getting death threats, which is not even saying over the line is not even, getting to the crux of the matter. It's beyond over the line. There's been, racial taunts and stuff like that. So completely unacceptable behavior from some fans. You can't even really call them that, because if you're treating a player like that, you're not actually a fan. But that's not the same thing as, people teasing him about his shooting. Is he upset when he's on Checked in a Fool every week too? Them showing the highlights of him hitting the top of the backboard with his shots. Like, I didn't see him mention that, but that's, arguably just as embarrassing as the Westbrick nickname.
Yeah. And that's where you get the nickname, right? Because I
didn't pull it out of thin air. I mean, it's
right.
It's
No,
apt.
It's apt. Absolutely.
To Skip Bayless's credit, it's not clever, but it's apt.
Look at the number and guys that, when they miss very closely. He's missed really, really bad. I mean, like, the amazing thing is, like, I 1 year in my life, and I gave it up. This is going back like 30 years ago. But the amazing thing is, when you watch the pros, even their really bad shots look great, right? Like, even like their worst shot, and they're frustrated, and I'm like, man, I would kill for that shot. Kind of the same thing with basketball players. Even when a guy misses, it's like in and out, or front rims or back rims, or just a little bit off. His misses are literally bricks. Like, he misses the rim, he misses the backboard, he clanks it. I mean, it's ugly to watch. It's almost as if he never played before. That's the frustrating part. And again, he's really not that different a player than he's been throughout his career. It's just he's now 33, so the athleticism isn't there. And oh, by the way, he's playing for the Los Angeles Lakers now, which there's a lot more pressure there. Yes, last year he's in Washington. The year before that in Houston. His entire career before that was in Oklahoma City. So he kind of could fly under the radar, and people would just follow his highlights, and the team would win. And you'd say, wow, Westbrook is averaging 22, 12, and 12, which is, I believe, what he averaged last year, which is crazy. But he was still an inefficient shooter. I mean, that hasn't changed.
Yeah, he's playing in LA with LeBron James. I mean, it's double the pressure.
Exactly. And LeBron has gone on and is having a great year. And it's kind of weird that LeBron's having such a great year. You would think that the Lakers would at least be better than they are, which, again, I just look at the standings, and they're 28 and 36. They're 8 games under 500 yet. They're in 9th place right now. They're only 3 games ahead of 11th place Portland. I mean, if they continue to lose and Portland got hot, which I doubt since they're in a tanking mode, they could even be out of the play-in tournament.
Yeah, they stink. They stink.
They're terrible. They're terrible. They're 7 and 17 in their last 24 games. I mean, that's like what you would expect from, I don't know, Oklahoma City or Detroit or Houston. I mean, they're playing like that. Like, there's no easy wins for the Lakers. I mean, LeBron had to go out and get 56 to beat Golden State. Golden State's reeling. And then if he doesn't play, they lose their next game against whoever. I mean, it's just they're not a good team. I mean, their best case scenario would be the 9th seed. Maybe you have to win 2 games to get into the playoffs and try to go from there. And again, Anthony Davis the last 2 years has been hurt a ton, and Westbrook has been a failure. And now I think when you look at Westbrook and really the Lakers as a whole, it does seem like leadership is way off on that team. And I'm going to take LeBron out of the equation just for a moment. I'm talking about ownership.
Of course you are.
Well, I've got to take him out. He's only a player, Jet. He has nothing to do with the roster construct. But the
Yeah.
Lakers, yeah, if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. But you look at it like Jeannie Buss, she battled her brother to get control of the team. Now you've got Kurt Rambis, who was a starter on championship caliber teams, but he was just kind of a role guy. He's now involved. Linda Rambis, Kurt Rambis's wife, is best friends with Jeannie Buss.
Right.
She's involved. You got Rob Pelinka, who was a former agent, who's the general manager. Now I understand Phil Jackson's getting somewhat involved and advising Jeannie Buss on how to handle Russell Westbrook. And then at the trade deadline, the Lakers made no moves because they basically said to LeBron, you put this team together, figure it out. Like, we're not going to just, eat contracts or do whatever's necessary. So now they're just kind of in a spin. And who knows what's going to happen? I mean, Frank Vogel's going to lose his job, right? Because in the NBA, it's
undoubtedly. Yep.
I mean, is Phil Jackson at 76 going to coach the Lakers next year?
No, LeBron hates him.
Hates him. Absolutely hates him.
Has been very clear about that, by the way. It's not a secret. He said it openly, basically.
Yeah, and I think when he called LeBron and his posse, it was a turnoff for LeBron. I don't think Jackson is a racist at all.
No, but he's an old white man.
An old white man who's out of touch, so I think he offended LeBron. So yeah, I can't see that happening. LeBron originally wanted Ty Lue to be the head coach. That would have been a better choice than Frank Vogel. But
the Lakers lowballed Ty Lue, if I'm remembering correctly.
And the Lakers are a weird franchise. They I hear all these different things. And by the way, I forgot to mention Magic Johnson still has his, fingers in the middle of the pie or whatever. So you've got all these different people advising Linda Buss instead of just having a really strong Jeannie. Linda Buss is Linda Rambis. Linda Rambis, Kurt Rambis. I'm all confused with the names.
It's a lot of people involved. That's how you know it's not good, is when you have all these people on the periphery.
I can't recall who it is. That's never good. Like you have to have that one strong leader. Have a president of basketball operations.
Like Brad Stevens.
Like Brad Stevens, right? Look at the Celtics, best team in basketball the last month and a half. Why not? But that doesn't work that way with the Lakers. And the Lakers are always it's a weird thing. It's kind of like a family business. And like, they're similar to the Celtics. They want to bring Celtics back into the fray, right? Like Phil Jackson won 5 championships with the Lakers. And, you have Magic won 5 championships with the Lakers. It's like, it's very incestuous. And sometimes it doesn't work. Maybe you need some outside ideas. In a sense, the Lakers have become kind of like the Dallas Cowboys, a huge brand, but one that hasn't been successful other than winning the championship 2 years ago over the last decade. And, I think a lot of it is they haven't adapted to modern times of drafting, developing, and again,
Sap, we've talked about this. They haven't been well run for a long time. They fall ass backward into the stars because of where they're located and their history.
Exactly. I mean, they were able to get Shaq and Kobe. Kobe was the 13th pick in the draft by Charlotte, and he didn't want to play there, so they traded Vlade Divac for Kobe Bryant. Kudos Jerry West. That's one of the greatest trades in NBA history, right? And then
Jerry West was all over that. Yep.
Jerry West, arguably the greatest executive in the history of the sport, right? And they had him, and they pushed him away. Like, even now at 84, Jerry West, I know, still consults with the Clippers and, probably has a strong say in that organization, but now you've offended one of your all-time great player logo, who's no longer with the Lakers. It's kind of a turnoff, the way they're run. And I don't see them getting out of this. The key to this all is Anthony Davis going to show up, be healthy, and be productive? Probably not, because you can't really count on Anthony Davis. And what's Westbrook going to be? Is it the final month of the season? Is he all of a sudden, after 12 years of being in the league, go, you know what, I'm going to play differently now? That's not going to happen.
Well, there's an accountability thing with the Lakers too, right? I mean, you're saying leadership. It's so that kind of comes down to accountability. Westbrook has not been accountable for how poorly he's played this season. He hasn't. Right. No. LeBron, he'll sit and do the press conferences. I mean, that's part of his job. And, he'll say, we got to find a way to be better. But, he hasn't taken any real accountability for he put this team together. Rob Pelinka, I don't know that he ever even talks to the media. I'm not in LA, and neither are you. So, we're not listening to LA Sports Radio, but my guess is that he has not talked to the media all that much. And Anthony Davis, like you said, he's hurt all the time, so he's out of sight, out of mind. There's nobody that's really been accountable for this. And poor Frank Vogel, like you said, this is just, I mean, he's had to manage so much in terms of ego and stars and stuff like that. Like he's going to lose his job. It's a mess there. And Westbrook obviously has another year in his contract. Everybody's saying, it's the breakup is inevitable, but who's going to want to do the Lakers the favor of trading for Westbrook's contract this offseason?
I mean, could it be the Knicks who probably move on from Coach Thibodeau and say, let's bring a star? I mean, Westbrook still has some star appeal, but again, I mean, if he thinks he's having trouble in LA, welcome to New York. That wouldn't be a real pleasant place either.
I almost feel like they have to buy him out, Sep.
They may have to. Or we kept hearing about the John Wall rumor. I mean, so what exactly is that? I mean, John Wall doesn't even play in Houston. Can he still play? I mean, it'd be interesting if they were traded for each other because they're somewhat similar players.
They've already been traded for each other.
They've already been traded for each other once. So yeah, those rumored trades of Ted Williams for Joe DiMaggio or Willie Mays for Millie Manuel. Well, we've already had Russell Westbrook and John Wall. Maybe it will happen again because their contracts are so bad. And the Lakers, they're in a tough spot right there.
All right, Seth, he's got a $47 million player option for next year. He can decline it if he wants to. Is there any chance he declines it?
No. Who would turn away $47 million?
A crazy person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he sometimes can be crazy, but he's not stupid.
So he's going to opt in, and then they're going to have to figure out how to get rid of him because they can't do this again.
No, I mean, can you sit down with him and say, Russell, you have to change the way you play? No, you can't do that. He's not going to have any part of that. Like, he couldn't play with Durant after a while. He couldn't play with Harden. Actually surprised me. He did pretty well in Washington and they made the play-in tournament, or they actually made it into the playoffs, if I recall. It's a tough thing because, he still puts up decent numbers, but they kind of come he's almost like the quarterback that still throws for like 4,500 yards, but throws 28 interceptions and his completion percentage is at 59% and the team's not very good. He's kind of like Jameis Winston.
Yeah. Okay.
Put up, if you want that as your quarterback, good luck. And if you want that as your point guard, good luck. I mean, so I don't know what the hell they're going to do. And look, LeBron went there. He did win a title, which is, a great accomplishment. He went there for business reasons. Like, I think we can all agree on that. Like, and good for him. He's now a billionaire. When he retires from playing basketball, he's going to be wildly successful. He owns 2% of Fenway Sports Group. He's probably going to own an NBA team at some point. I mean, all of that's going to happen. And he's a modern day success story without question. But that's why he went there. It wasn't the best situation necessarily. He was able to get Anthony Davis, able to win a championship. So he kind of fulfilled that promise. But the thing about LeBron is LeBron's never been loved in LA. This is his fourth year.
He's a mercenary.
Exactly. And again, for how long did we hear Laker fans talk about that Kobe was greater than LeBron? Well, they're not giving up that today, even today. And then, of course, with the unfortunate passing of Kobe 2 years ago, I think it's even stronger. I think you could look at the whole history of the Los Angeles Lakers and just think about how many great players they've had. I mean, it felt like a third of the all-time team, 75th anniversary team, at some point played for the Lakers. And I'm not being crazy about saying that, not being hyperbolic. I'll say this, the three most popular Lakers are Kobe and Magic and probably Jerry West. Now, West only won one championship, but I would say the two most popular Lakers would be Kobe and Magic, right? I mean, they only played for the Lakers.
I don't think there's a close third.
Not even a close third. And maybe Jerry West is that third guy, but Kareem, Shaq maybe, but the big guys are always tough to, warm up to. Like Kareem, as great as Kareem was kind of a very quiet guy. Wilt to me is a lot like LeBron. Went there late in his career, did win a championship, and but you think more of Wilt as a playing in Philadelphia, not Los Angeles, and LeBron and is going to be a Cleveland Cavalier. He played 11 years there, did win a title, but so LeBron's not even beloved in LA. I mean, we've seen the racial signage on one of his houses and the mural that was whatever. The mural of his that was spray paint. defaced. I was going to say defecated. That's not the right word.
It
Defaced.
may have been on. I don't know.
It may have been. Who knows? So he's never been loved there. I mean, they want to win a championship, and they equal the Celtics in championships, and he was the biggest reason. He's never been beloved there. No. I mean, if he came here to end his career, you think he'd be beloved by the Celtics? They'd say, okay, great, you got LeBron James, maybe you win, but you booed the guy for 15 years. Of course you're not going to embrace him.
No, once he chose to be a mercenary, he's not going to be beloved in any other market except for Cleveland's his hometown. Well, Akron is, but so I guess they'll always forgive him and accept him there. But
yeah.
If wherever he ends his career, they're not going to love him.
No, unless it's back at Cleveland, which could be possibility. Who knows? I mean, that would be some symmetry there. Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland, LA, Cleveland. Sounds like a lot of travel.
I don't know that they'd want to take him back. Honestly, he's a terrible relationship with the owner.
He does. Yeah, he does. And I don't think Dan Gilbert's necessarily beloved in Cleveland either, but that's a whole other issue. Right. But I mean, he'll probably just end in LA because that's where his businesses are. And look, who doesn't want to live in Southern California?
Yeah. He's like you said, he went there for business reasons. He did win a championship. But before that, the year before that, and every year subsequent has been just a complete mess.
Yeah, it has.
In LA. And, the most damning thing I'd say in terms of the standings this year, the fact that the Clippers haven't had their 2-star players, the team they share the building with, and they have, they're 4 games better than the Lakers. That shouldn't be the case.
Do you realize in the last 10 years, the Lakers are 7-32 against the Clippers? That's
not good.
That'd be like if the Mets were, winning 80% of their games against the Yankees, or, pick any other team that shares a city, especially the Lakers and Clippers. The Lakers, along with the Celtics, clearly the 2 most successful franchises in the history of the sport, and the Clippers maybe the least successful franchise in the history of the sport, but they're 32-7 against the Lakers the last 10 years. That blew me away. And they're 4-0 this year without Kawhi and Paul George. Like, not good right now in LA, but we'll see what happens. If Anthony Davis comes back and all of a sudden they catch fire, but I can't see that happening. Anthony Davis will get hurt again, and Russell Westbrook continues to play like Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, I don't even know why they'd bother bringing back Anthony Davis at this point. It just, the morale seems so low there. Like, what? I just, when the team they're hanging their heads, their body language is as bad as it is. Why even play for this season anymore? I just don't see the point.
Yeah, I mean, give LeBron. I mean, I think LeBron wants to finish the year mostly because I think he wants to surpass Karl Malone to become the 2nd all-time leading scorer, and then set himself up to pass Kareem as the all-time leading scorer next year. So I think he'll do that. And he's still playing at a great level. And I do think he wants to win the scoring title. He's like 0.2 of a point behind Joel Embiid. And I think with James Harden, maybe Embiid's scoring will go down a little bit, although Harden's such a great passer, Embiid will be even more efficient. But I think he wants to win a scoring title, which would be kind of cool in his 19th year. I know, at this point, when you've accomplished as much as him, you just kind of like add to the resume, and that would be pretty cool, actually. But maybe give Anthony Davis the rest of the year off. He's going to get hurt again next year, probably, but then you got to retool that roster. They
might have to look to trade him, honestly. They might have to.
Yeah, why not? I mean, the guy can't stay healthy. I thought he came into camp this year and into the season in better shape, but he's just, there's an old term, like injury prone or accident prone. Like you have a little kid that constantly, falls down the stairs or runs through the glass plate door. It's just accident prone. He seems to be accident prone. Like some of these injuries he's going up for a layup and somehow his right foot comes down and he turns an ankle or he twists a knee. And, for the first 16, 17 years of his career, LeBron would do that and just tighten a sneaker up and go back out and play. Well, Anthony Davis isn't that same type of dude.
No, he's not. And, sometimes that happens with the bigger guys too. And he's, LeBron's has been a physical freak his whole life.
Yep.
All right, Sap. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks to Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out the podcast wherever podcasts are found. You also check out our social medias at JohnSap25 and at Jet Stryer. And we'll be back later with a new podcast. See you, everybody.